What's up, guys? Welcome back to the Camps channel. Today, here is the Ghost. It has been here for some time now, and I haven't actually field tested this yet, so this is going to be just an introduction to Ghost. I know a lot of you guys probably already watched Joshua's Bardwell's video on the setup and all that good stuff, and really dived into the meat of what this module is all about. However, I wanted to give you my sort of educated opinion on some of the protocols that are inside this module, the overall setup, my opinion on the setup, the ease of use, primarily between Ghost and Crossfire, because why would I take this out when it works so well? It also auto updates the receivers, which is fantastic. So anytime I put a brand new Micro Nano RX onto a new quad, the first time I bind it up, it's super simple to bind it up and get it going, and Crossfire has been working for me flawlessly as far as the penetration on 900 megahertz. So I have trusted this system for maybe like 4 years now. It seems like coming up on 5 years. I don't know. It's been out forever. Before, I was flying long range with also another ImmersionRC module. So thank you to ImmersionRC for getting me started in long range with one of my first long range wings. It was a 60-inch crash test dummies wing. I don't know if you guys have ever heard of that brand, but go look up his website. Some super cool wings, and very cheap. You can crash them into basically a brick wall after you wrap them. They are super durable, great for beginners, and super cheap. Crash test dummy wings. So TBS Crossfire came around after Easy UHF, which all of us were using Easy UHF, and there was it was not perfect. There was some issues with Easy UHF, and thank God that Trappy over at TBS came out with this great Crossfire protocol running 900. So this has been fantastic. I've yet actually to fail safe, and it might be because I kind of know where I can go and dip into without really getting too deep in the trenches. While you're miles out, you need to still have a bit of a line of sight between yourself and the receiver, but you have RSSI to know how low your telemetry is getting back to your radio. So if you're a long range pilot, you're constantly watching your RSSI, especially when you're dipping in. So the general rule of long range is to keep getting higher as you go out and gain altitude. The really long distance guys, you watch these Russian videos, these guys are up like 15,000 feet up in the air. I do not recommend that. I don't run that kind of power on my radio. It is illegal in the United States, and we will not do that. But one of the biggest differences between this module, much smaller and lighter module, is that this one's running on 2.4 and this one's running on 900, and that's the base of this whole equation, Crossfire versus Ghost. And this is the full-blown TBS Crossfire module, which will run up to like 2 watt. This guy does around 350 milliwatt. So 350 milliwatt will get you, it'll get you 15 miles out there. This will go very far. I have not tested it to that. I will not put that on my YouTube channel, obviously, because I don't want somebody knocking on my front door. If you want to test that, please do range test it yourself, not me, because I'm the guy with the big YouTube channel, right? We got to play it smart here and stay within legal terms. But so far, I feel like this is definitely going to be easier for you guys for updating your receivers. The Team Black Sheep software that you can put on your laptop works on Mac or PC, and it's super simple to use. So switching out this protocol also means that when you move over to Ghost, you also have to update your radio. You have to update OpenTX to the Ghost version, which is available on the ImmersionRC website. You can go download that, update your radio in OpenTX, and once you do that and restart, you will now see that your external spot in your radio will now scroll over to Ghost. And before that, this one has June 2020 on here, so there is no Ghost protocol in here yet. So I can't even make this active until I update the radio. So that might be a turn off for some of you guys. I know some of you guys just watching my channel are just getting into this, and this is this is definitely something intimidating for you, and I don't recommend, if you're first trying long range, getting into using the Ghost. It is $50 cheaper than the full-blown version of this, but this also has an LED display on the back. It also shows you when you hook up GPS, your latitude and longitude on this screen. If you fail-safe with TBS Crossfire, the last known latitude and longitude will be displayed on this screen, and it freezes up. And I have been able to experience that with a friend who lost his wing, and we were able to walk right up to his wing using a GPS app on the phone. So very reliable there if you lose signal. And this one also has a display, and we'll talk about all the things that are on this one, but the penetration is also a big factor here. This is, for some reason, running 2.4. 2.4 video has been very popular for the last 2 or 3 years, maybe the last 2 years for long-range pilots. I mean, there's so much to be said about what's reliable and what's not. However, Crossfire is going to have better penetration. It just does. It has better penetration than 2.4, and that's a fact. You will fail safe more with the Ghost than you will the Crossfire, and it benefits me if you buy a Ghost. I mean, I'm not saying don't buy a Ghost. It will benefit me, but you're here to hear the truth. And which one would I choose? Would I choose TBS Crossfire on a trip where I knew that I was going to go camp fly and FPV long range with my friends? I'm not going to take this one. This one's going to stay here. I'm going to take my Crossfire. It has not let me down. And I have multiple systems running Crossfire that have just always been reliable. And everything is still here in the radio. I plug this in, I hook it up, I bind my receiver, it works in the receiver tab, and it has its own Crossfire selection in the protocol in the configuration tab inside Betaflight. So this is already working. It's years in the working. However, it is cool that something new is coming out. Yes, these receivers are the Atto receivers. I have a couple here that I'm going to show you on the bench. They're around $35. So I was hoping that these receivers would be a little bit cheaper, because at that point, if you want to get R9M receivers are going to be cheaper than these. So R9M receiver will cost you around, I believe, under $10. You know, it's about the same price as like an XM Plus S-Bus type of receiver. And there are multiple selectable protocols inside this module, and which are navigatable. You can change it from S-Bus Fast to Spectrum, and we'll talk about that a little more in depth. It also has 2 little tiny antennas here for starting out with. Hopefully you can upgrade these a little bit later as well, but I think you would be safe and just fine with these. You might have better penetration if you find some more beastie 2.4 antennas that are compatible with Ghost. So I'll try to look for those for you guys, and we'll try to do like a full setup video on this little guy later. But let's just put it on the bench real quick. Let me show you this little guy up close and personal, and it is compatible with any JR bay out there. So if you have a radio that already has a module bay, you're good to go there. But again, like I said, you're going to have to update your radio's firmware. So with all of the good and bad, I think that mostly it's good that we have an alternative to Crossfire now, right? What do you guys think? What would you do? Would you go Ghost, or would you go Crossfire? Your first venture into LR, long range, what would you do? Let's go ahead and put it on the bench, take a look. All right, guys, there it is on the bench. You get this box right here. It is around $149 for the Ghost system module, 2 dipole antennas, and you get 3 of the Atto receiver RXs, which is super cool. I love that. When you buy Crossfire, you get nothing in the box. you get Crossfire and you do get the antenna for the module, I believe, but it's been years since I bought mine, so I don't quite remember. But I'm also using this antenna with it. It is the diamond antenna, which I really like a lot, and this has not failed me. Great antenna. It's a little bit bulky for what it is, but I just trust this a little more than I do the dipoles. However, when you're working with something that's running up to 350 milliwatt, it's going to be fine, trust me. If you get out there and you get some range going, you will, if you have a good line of sight, it's not likely that you fail safe with this system. If you start dipping into things and going down in between crevasses and you're doing some mountain dives and flying through trees, you could possibly fail safe up on the mountain with this. So you're going to need to want to crank this way up, and you're also going to want to make sure that you have an external battery a little larger than what the stock battery is in your TX16S. So usually I use an external battery option running to the module, and that's one other thing that the Ghost does not have, guys. There is no other way to externally power this bad boy. Maybe we could do it through this port, this USB port right here, but I'm not sure about that. I have not confirmed that. TBS Crossfire has an XT30 on the bottom. How convenient is that? Very convenient. It also has one port up here for your antenna. This one has two ports here, which is great. Both of these receivers do cost around the same price. They're both around $35. TBS Crossfire has over-the-air upgrades for the receiver, and the Ghost receiver, the Atto, also does that. It will update over the air, so that's kind of nice. OTC, over the air updates, very nice. Now, the weight on these, both of these receivers with the antenna on there, let's just put the Atto on there first and see what we get. Hopefully you guys are thinking about getting into playing around with some long range in the future, having some fun with that. 1.7 with that antenna. Now let's put on the Nano. 1.3, 1.4. So it is slightly lighter than the Atto. TBS Nano is lighter just by a few points there. So not drastically lighter, but it is lighter. The other thing I want you guys to notice is that it does not have any plastic casing around it. It does come with a piece of heat shrink though inside the pack, and this is what the pack looks like. So inside your Ghost box, you'll get this. You'll get these 4 wires in here that connect to your flight controller and the antenna itself. The other thing that I have to remind you is that when you're plugging these in and binding them, they do have a nice physical button on here for binding. You're going to bind these in S-Bus or that Spectrum protocol. So it's nice that you have a choice. If you're flying long range, the S-Bus protocol is going to be a little more reliable. If you're flying closer in, use the Spectrum one. You also have race options with this, which is kind of cool. And on the receiver itself, they are marked, which is nice. So I'll bring this in close so you guys can see it. Whereas Crossfire is not marked. So you see those 4 tabs right there. You have to open up the manual. You have to look at what each one is, and you have to mix and swap 2 of the channels to make them a TX and RX to make this Crossfire Nano work. So one thing to remember there. Sometimes I don't use one of these for a while and I go back and like try to set it up and I'm like, oh god, I forgot that we have to mix. But very similar to setting up a GPS, it works kind of the same way. So we have S here, we have positive and ground. So S is going to be your signal tab, and we have telemetry on the far outside. So as of the first issue of this, telemetry is not working on the Ghost yet. So until you update to the Ghost protocol, you will not see telemetry working on these receivers inside Betaflight. So set it up on the proper aux channel, and after you've updated to the Ghost protocol, you'll see it. But again, it's nice that this one will work when you set up the RX or the RSSI properly. which is really nice. You need to have telemetry if you're going to fly long range. And let's just go ahead and set the modules themselves on the scale as well. Just give you a quick live weigh in there. 44.8 grams. Now with the antennas, let's see what we get. 59.7. That's with the antennas. Not bad. That's pretty light. I like how light this Ghost module is. And the TBS Crossfire, this baby is big and heavy and bulky. 98.4 grams. Now, I don't even know if I can get this all on the scale here for it to even stand up. We just do it like this. Make sure the antenna's not touching the table here. With the diamond antenna, I'm looking at 119.2 grams. So quite a bit heavier, yes. But if you're not hiking, up to the top of the tallest mountain in the world, that weight difference is probably going to be just fine. And I have to say that ImmersionRC is boasting that the Ghost will get up to about 40 kilometers, which is fantastic. But you better be using GPS if you're trying to fly out any type of long range with your aircraft out of sight. I had friends years ago that would fly long range and they would fly without flight controllers and they just slap some Crossfire on their wing and go for it. And the problem with that is that they're flying without RSSI and GPS, and they have no way of knowing if they're about to dip. And some of the guys lost their wings out in the middle of a forest or up on top of an 80-foot Oregon tree. So whatever you do, if you decide to get one of these, the biggest tip I can give you guys is please run GPS and field test it before you go out. Make sure that your return to launch is working. If it's in iNav, test that. If you're using Betaflight GPS systems, use that as well. This should be compatible with both of those systems, including iNav with wings or quads. So you can also do PWM protocol on this guy, which most people aren't these days. But you can also use Spectrum SRX L2, and again, that's the one you want to use if you're using it a little bit closer up. Now, to get that active inside Betaflight in the receiver tab, you won't see your sticks moving until you go into the CLI and you type in set space serial RX underscore half duplex equals on. And once you do that, press return and then type in save, hit return again, and that will open it up. If that does not work, you need to type in set SRX L2. So that is going to be the two CLI command prompts that you need to get the first version working if you're going to select SRX L2. So if you're using SBus, which is what I recommend for flying long range, SBus fast, you want to set it up in the CLI by typing set SBus underscore baud underscore fast equals on, and that will activate it inside Betaflight. And after you do that, press return and then also type save again, and you should be good to go. Now this one also has a joystick in the very middle for navigating all the screens, and we have a port here for updates, which you guys should do. Go on the website, go on ImmersionRC website, and go to the download section and go ahead and update this module before you take it out for the first time. But we're getting into new territory here, guys, with something different, and I'm not really sure why they chose 2.4. They say it's less interference with the GPS might be the biggest benefit of using this. You might have a more reliable GPS with less chance of it scrambling on 900. However, I haven't had any GPS problems. And I've been flying for a long time. But now we're kind of spoiled. We have all these different systems for reliability, and I think that this one is an option to consider if you don't mind tinkering around with the updates, updating the radio, updating the module, and all that. Some of you guys were turned off originally by R9 because the R9 module had to also be updated, and it was a little bit of a screwy way to update. And this one is a little easier, but it's definitely gonna have more of a learning curve. Like, you can just go right in and start using Crossfire, and they bind up super easy. And then when you get a brand new Nano, it auto updates from the controller. So my Tango 2, once I bind it up, it's like, hey, do you want to update this receiver? And I'm like pressing this button right here, and it says yes, and then it goes through 1 to 100% updated. And I also love this form factor as well. This is my go-to right now for any of my long-range quads. I'm not even sure that I'll test that many Ghost setups this year. If you're trying to take your receiver and put it to your flight controller, you're going to want to run the S signal pad over to any of your open UART tabs for TX 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever. That's how you're going to hook up for using S-Bus. And you're going to have to set inside Betaflight just like you do with your XM Plus receivers. You're going to select Serial RX on that for this to be active. And that's about it for the Ghost right now, guys, running 2.4. And just another option out there, which I think is fantastic. And please do remember not to power these up without this on there, because you will kill if not the receiver, you will burn out the RSSI. That means burning out this port right here. So once no data can come back in here, you will never get RSSI again. So make sure that you, just like all of your video transmitters on your quads, you make sure you put in an antenna on it before you fire it up for the first time. But thanks for checking out this initial review of Ghost and hearing all of the pros and cons of TBS Crossfire versus Ghost. And again, this is just my opinion on this stuff. Take it with a grain of salt, but it's also an educated opinion. Running 2.4 versus running this TBS Crossfire system. So yeah, thanks for subscribing and getting all the information on my channel. I'll bring more tutorials and stuff coming up for Ghost. We'll get into it a little more. I'll try to make a much shorter version for the setup and binding process with the Ghost coming up on the channel. So stay tuned for that. Please do subscribe, guys. Take care and be safe out there. ImmersionRC Ghost. It is available and shipping. I'll see you guys on the next one.